Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à la chaîne pour l'histoire de la mode ultime. In other words, welcome back to the ultimate fashion history for our Style Icons of the Music World series. Why was I talking French? Because this time around we are going to be looking at the influence, impact and legacy of one of the most iconic figures of 20th century music, and she just happens to be French, of course, Edith Piaf, or Edith Piaf as she is known in France. We all have an instant image in our minds when we hear the name Edith Piaf, and so I thought it would be really fun to discuss her iconic look and its impact and legacy on fashion today. This idea was given to me by my friend Len, so merci beaucoup for that, Len. Before we talk about her style, let's just remind ourselves that Edith Piaf also gave us some of the most instantly recognizable and beloved songs of the 20th century, like La Vie en Rose and No, je ne regrette rien. This is not my anthem, I regret everything. So now let's take a look at Edith Piaf's incredible and truly groundbreaking style. We all know the legend of Edith Piaf, how she was brought up in a brothel, then sort of lived on the streets singing for centimes and sous that would be thrown at her. She didn't have a very happy life, but her biography is well known to all, so let's just focus on her style. She was discovered in the 1930s, and she never really broke free of the 1930s beauty aesthetic, but this was very deliberate. Take a look at her curly chestnut hair and those incredibly thin, penciled on eyebrows. This was a makeup look that she retained throughout her career in the 40s, the 50s, and right up to her death in the early 1960s. Now, of course, some women do get locked into the beauty aesthetic of their youth, but in Piaf's case, this was really deliberate. It was almost like theatrical makeup. She wasn't a conventionally beautiful woman, and she knew that. And so she created a style and a beauty aesthetic for herself that really spoke to drama and absolutely defined her image. Edith Piaf was not a tall woman. She was only 4'8", and in fact her petite, diminutive stature was one of the reasons her first manager decided to change her name to Piaf, which is slang for sparrow. She was like a little sparrow with this incredible voice. To give you an idea of just how tiny 4'8" actually is, there is Edith Piaf with her very good friend Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich looks like an Amazon next to Edith Piaf, but in fact Marlene herself was only 5'6". Here's another image that gives you an idea of just how tiny Edith Piaf was. And yet, when she stood on stage, she was like a giant. She was the grande dame of French music, and so much of this incredible stage presence that belied her tiny little figure was due to her wardrobe, as well as her incredible talent and charisma. Of course, the little black dress she would always wear on stage. Before we talk about the dress, please note that she always wore flat shoes. You'd think that somebody who was 4'8" would wear high shoes to give herself more stature, but she didn't. She was so aware of her image and her stage presence, and part of her image was being tiny. And so she really sort of kept that going throughout her career, this idea that she was this little black sparrow with this incredible voice. It added to the drama that marked Edith Piaf. Of course, she didn't wear the same little black dress throughout her career, but they were always very simple, they were always of a similar length, and they were always made of crepe or silk. It's hard for us to imagine Edith Piaf wearing anything else, but these little black dresses really were a conscious and very deliberate tool to maintain her stage image, because in her personal life she certainly didn't wear little black dresses all the time. In fact, she rarely wore black in her personal life, and this really speaks to her understanding that a visual image in music is as important as what you sound like. So before Rei Kawakubo and Comme des Garçons insisted that it was chic to wear all black all the time, Edith Piaf was doing it on stage. She was a trailblazer. I can't think of anyone before Edith Piaf, at least in entertainment, who wore an all-black wardrobe all the time. She's also the first entertainer, at least the first entertainer I can think of, who had intentionally messy hair. Now, I know it doesn't look very messy from our 21st century standards, but believe me, in Edith Piaf's time, this was quite shocking. It was intentionally déshabillé. It really spoke to this sort of street urchin image she had on stage. And it was a look that she retained throughout her career. Just to give you an idea that this déshabillé hair was intentional, take a look at one of her contemporaries, another singer I love, Rosemary Clooney. Look how immaculately coiffed she was. But this really, again, speaks to Edith Piaf's very unique stage image. This was an era, the 30s, 40s, 50s, and going into the 60s too, when a female singer would be immaculately coiffed, would wear an evening gown, would wear sequins. Edith Piaf didn't do that. She wore those little crepe or silk day dresses with flats, messy hair, and it was all very intentional because she wasn't actually a messy person. Because look at her nails. Her hair was all wild, but throughout her career, she always had the most impeccably manicured hands. She used them so much in her performing, so expressively that she grew her nails very long and filed them very sharp. She didn't wear nail polish, or did she? I think that in all of her pictures, you can see she has a very light or a clear nail polish on. This was somebody who did care for her hands. So the whole idea of her sort of looking like she's been dragged in off the street was just part of this very polished image she had, even though it wasn't polished at all. So with her pencil-thin eyebrows and messy hair and little black dress and flat shoes and incredible stage presence, it is no wonder that fashion today channels, quote-unquote, Edith Piaf so often. She's so instantly recognizable. I think the definitive film on Edith Piaf has to be, though, La Vie en Rose, starring Marianne Cotillard, who gives a breathtaking performance of this very sad chanteuse, and won, quite deservedly, the Academy Award for her performance. Edith Piaf was not a natural beauty. She was a tiny little woman who had a very difficult life, and yet she created something in herself of such enduring beauty that I think she's sort of a lesson to all of us. Make the most of what you've got. Find a look that works for you and stick with it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Style Icons of the Music World on the Ultimate Fashion History. You can contact me through my website, amandahalle.com. Join our Facebook group. We always have lots of fun over there. And click the little circle to subscribe, because I'll be back very soon with more on the Ultimate Fashion History. Thanks for watching. Au revoir.